Right, everybody, we'll make a start. I'll introduce myself. My name is Glenn Malcolm. I work at Bangkok Pattern School in Thailand, and I've been there, this is my 8th year now. My job is cross-campus advisor for technology. I've been working in Asia for over 20 years now. So if I went back home, I'd get reverse culture shock at least. In that time, I've worked at various levels in schools for technology, leading technology, head of technology, director of technology, and now I'm at a better place with less admin. So this, for your information, is being recorded. That's why I've got a microphone on me. So if this will be fast, just to let you know, this is a journey. It will be a series of experiences and also how this idea has evolved into something enormous in my perspective. At the end, there are how-to guides and also a link to this presentation that will be on my website. So we'll begin. So this is using ChatGPT as an assessor, and this is about trying to understand how you can create text and use text as an assessment in your classroom. When you're in your classroom, there's all kinds of things going on, and one of the tools I use is video, and I'll show you how this works. But I need to tell you beforehand that this is the second time that I've done this session, so people who came last year at Verso will have seen this, but this is sort of a development, and so there are a series of developments that happened with this. So I need to let you know how this all began. When we started using ChatGPT, it was very sort of young and in its infancy. And at that time, if you remember, trying to get AI to be a person and to create a persona was one of the guidelines and one of the guardrails that you weren't allowed to do. You weren't allowed to use it in that way. Also, there weren't things such as projects. You couldn't upload images at that particular time. That came sort of later. And so with a bunch of Reddit threads that I was reading at the time, it transcribed that people were getting AI and ChatGPT at the time to write in the likes of Shakespeare, in types of authors, movie scripts, all that kind of thing. And at the very same time as well, our school was going through a process of using Tom Sherrington's walkthroughs. And so, do people use Tom Sherrington's walkthroughs at your school? Does anybody know what this is? Yeah. If you don't know, I'll tell you really quickly. They are a series of guides of interactions that happen in your classroom. So they are sort of processes and question techniques and the way that learning happens. And the basis of it is Barrett Rosenstein's 17 Principles of Instruction. And so what I was trying to do at that time was try to subvert ChatGPT to be this person by giving it the text of the bio of these people. And I was testing it out with Barrett Rosenstein, for example. And I said, well, you know, if you were this person and you had this qualification, you know, what could you do in this context? And so we were having these walkthroughs, and we were using these walkthroughs as a set of 7 in our school. And the problem was that when people were coming to observe our lessons and we had to use particular parts of these walkthroughs, it was hard to get something that was like the best of what you were, you know, the best of your ability, the best of your students. And so I decided to film everything. And this is what I do now. I film all my lessons and I film all my interactions. The only problem was that at the time, trying to use ChatGPT was really difficult because you'd have also a token set that you couldn't use. You could only go to about 4,000 tokens or something like that. And so it became really tricky. And so this process took over from recording lessons like this. Is Alina, and I'm using the same equipment right here. And so we would record the interactions and try to process it with the books from Tom Sherrington and Barrett Rosenstein. So here, Alina, this is in my classroom. We have, you know, we're quite fortunate that we have PCs, Macs, and iPads to use in our lessons. If you look closer, you can see that Yaya, Alina's not using the videos, but you can see Yaya to the top. She's using the video instruction. You can just see my face in the bottom right-hand corner. That context is going to become important in a second, because when I use the assessment and I use the video, I had to go and work out how I'm going to get text to be assessed. And the quickest way to do this really was to use YouTube transcripts. And so it was going to be the quickest way to use YouTube transcripts, upload this as an unlisted video. And so you'd have hours of unlisted video. That way you were able to go and assess the text and assess the conversations and the conversations to and fro from me to the students. And so we would have instructions and conversations, questioning techniques, and then I would ask the ChatGPT to assess based on being Baruch Rosenshine or from the walkthrough books. Now at the time, this is when it changed to you being allowed to put PDFs of a certain size up into ChatGPT and getting it to have more context, which again bolsters your results. And so this was kind of what we would get. And so in here, you'll see that video transcripts uploaded into YouTube and then put into, just pasted direct into ChatGPT. And then I'd ask it to be this person and I'd ask it to assess. And you'll notice that on the bottom, it would say, you need to go and provide context. Now this is important because when you're applying context to it, from the video that you saw Yayo using, I had also lessons upon lessons where I'm teaching them in a mode called Mode A to Mode B. In the walkthrough books, one of the subjects and one of the areas is front-loading learning and then allowing the students to run projects, their own projects or semi-assisted projects. And it meant that you would front-load all the learning with the videos, and that was the context. So then not only the conversations in my classroom, but also the videos that I was producing for the lessons. So the students would go through a series of tutorials and then they would apply themselves later on. That was Mode A. And then I'd apply the question, how they've learned, what structures they need, and then it would ask for context. And so it would ask us to reassess. And in one of the realizations, here you can see this is another class, they're using the same videos and the same context. It was asking for rubrics. So it was asking for lesson structures, it was asking for lesson content, lesson resources, and then most importantly, the rubrics. And these became more and more poignant and pointed for us to ask and to frame our questions both front and back, so backwards and forwards. So then we were asking for long-term improvement. Now, one of the things that became a turning point for this was the girl that we saw a moment ago, Alina. She became one of the leaders in the class, and this became apparent in our assessment when we're using, especially Baruch Rosenshine's instruction. They were saying, well, Rosenshine, in inverted commas, was saying, what peer-to-peer student support do you have here? And so this long-term assessment improvement became sort of students teaching students. And so this became instructional coaching, not just for us, but instructional coaching for students. And so I started to think about how we could start to make digital resources using ChatGPT. What are the goals now? What are we moving forward towards? And so this became a thing that is evident in most of the literature, both from Baruch Rosenshine and the walkthroughs, was engage in comparative learning. Encourage your students to compare and contrast different modeling techniques or designs to deepen their understanding, because in this context, they're learning about architecture. So you'll see the beginning of that, they're using an application called Tinkercad. And in the project, at that time, we weren't going into architecture. And the suggestions from Rosenshine and from the walkthroughs was, well, what is the end goal here? And I asked it back. I said, what do you think we should do? We've got these students who are leading students. And they said, well, have you asked the students? And I said, not really. So I asked the students, and they said, why don't we do something? Why don't we build something that's where we live? And so I put this back into GPT with the students right there, and they said, what about the buildings and the architecture and the modeling techniques that are around you? How can you recreate Bangkok? And it became this model. It became this project, Bangkok Architecture for Year 4 students. And the students started to build architecture and all the models and all the buildings that were in Bangkok. So here is providing context. So this is just an example of my playlists inside YouTube. And so I gave this whole series of videos and the instructions into ChatGPT, asked it to assess, see what we could do. and see what we could come up with in terms of fostering poignant learning. So then, this is all fine. This is all bread and butter for us right now. We can go and paste this into ChatGPT. It's really easy for us because we're way beyond this. GPT has developed far beyond this basic model. And so at the time, we were trying to work out what goals were on the horizon. And so this has just been a PD session for us recently. So this you can see how far ahead that this was pushing us, was custom GPTs to create a teacher assessor based on Barrett Rosenshine's Fundamentals of Learning and Tom Sherrington's walkthroughs. And so we're able to go and put in huge amounts of PDFs now and create, at that time, to create your custom GPT. Unfortunately, at that time, it was a premium set. Only teachers who had the paid-for model could access this. And only recently, in the last, 6 months or so at our school, we use Copilot and use the agent and Copilot. And so it's developed from that into Copilot, which I'll show you in a second. Okay? And so this became a framework then. It wasn't just me sort of pasting text into ChatGPT in the hopes that it was going to give me something, a decent piece of feedback or some guidance on what we should be doing next in our lessons or how we can make our lessons more enjoyable or the learning deeper. And so our next goals was, well, how can we take the students further? You know, it all comes down to the students. Well, how can we take the students further? And so we were able to go and bring in an idea of student leadership across all I teach. So at that point, I teach 4 classes. So it's about 90 students thereabouts. And we were able to go and record the conversations between the students. However, when the students are in this mode, I mean, I think we've all experienced this when we've had students talking to students, trying to interview students. They need coaching on questioning techniques. They will ask a question and then they will give a 1-word answer, a 2-word answer, and it's very plain. So one of the tests inside the walkthroughs is say it again better. Can you reframe the question? Can you reframe the answer? How can your answer be better? Sadly, we have a lot of EAL students and language isn't forthcoming in an English context. So we had to go and create digital resources for our students that I'll come to in a second. At the same time, we were trying to fork out how we could go and set our goals in further on different projects. And so most of us will have done this at the same time. And this is, I'm just going to plant this seed here because this is for something that's coming much later. I'm going to show you on this journey because it's a 4-part situation here. This is another set of Year 4 learning. This is what we do in Term 1B, which has just happened right now. This is using Procreate and putting the PDFs in with a rubric and asking it to assess the learning based on the rubrics and give us some feedback and give students feedback based on the lesson content and how well each student has actually applied those techniques, layering techniques, text techniques, hierarchy, that kind of thing. And so currently, this was giving us about a 60% success rate. And we weren't particularly happy with it. And also, we weren't particularly happy with what it was giving us back. It was giving us text back, but here we've got Lele. Lele is EAL. We call it, he's on level 2 EAL. And so if I spoke to him and said effective layering and good color harmony created a cohesive look that added depth, he wouldn't know what we're talking about. Okay. So I'm going to plant this seed now because this is what is coming next. And we were realizing that the language that we wanted was not giving us student-based language. It's not giving us a whole context at all. And so I'm not a coder by any shape or shape or form. I know some HTML because that's my job, but we decided to go and create a resource in GitHub. I've never used GitHub before. I asked GPT how to use GitHub, how to create a set of techniques here. Hopefully this is going to play. It's going to play. No. If you scan this, you can get a live working version of this. Each black box here is from the walkthroughs. So this is each section from the walkthroughs, and the students are then able to interview each other in pairs. So each student can take either the top box or the bottom box, and so you can go and the students can then ask each other about their learning, about what it is they're applying in this Tinkercad model, in this Tinkercad architecture project. And so if you tap on the boxes, you'll see there's like 6 sections for each part. You'll see that when you tap on the boxes, that the questions change, and you get about 6 or 7 different questions for your students to ask each other. This is such a simple process of asking GPT to help you go and build a web page in GitHub, and it will guide you through GitHub. So how does this take us a little bit further? What's going on now? So far, we can all apply this. And so at school, we were trying to work out the goals of spreading this across the entire school. How can we include everybody? And so we started to set up a whole series of training sessions based on the models that we have in school, which is Copilot and Gemini. So I don't have the gems in here, but you know the way that they work. They have a structure and a configuration. And so in here, we use ChatGPT alongside Copilot at the same time. So split screen, left-hand side, right-hand side, ChatGPT, and then you say, this is what I'm making, guide you along the way. And this is going to become more poignant in a second. Everything will come together, you'll see. That the way that we are building much bigger things and much more in-depth processes, especially around assessment and reporting, is using this. And so teachers now are using these bots and creating them for maths, for SharePoint, for all kinds of assessment techniques, classroom techniques, question techniques. And so even our PLT are using this when they go and use their learning walks. So, the human aspect, or so far. We were at a point where GPT, when you paid for it, allowed you to go and talk to the AI and give you some kind of guidance. And keeping in that sort of school mode of coaching and student coaching, we decided with my coach and as the coachee, we had a problem with year 2 and learning to play. And so learning through play, assisted play, free play, and the students not being able to get their ideas and develop them in such a way that they were going to be able to get resources and then develop them and then build something with whatever materials they have at the time. And so my coach and I decided to experiment with actually using GPT as our coach and developing all these assessment techniques and bringing everything together about what we could make and how it can guide us and be our guide. And so this is just an example of Pat and I's conversation. Now, a caveat to this is that when you talk to GPT, it will give a transcript. So that when you go to your coaching session, you're starting at the end. You have the text right there in front of you, so you don't have to go through those 3 steps with your coach. And so we had this.
I would like you to be my instructional coach.
I'd be honored to be your instructional coach. Let's work together to achieve your goals. What would you like to focus on first?
I'm a teacher and I am a campus support for educational technology. I am going to support a colleague as their coach to create a long-term goal that's about 9 months in length. And the goal is to create a digital resource for students to self-plan and self-guide based on questioning techniques that we use in school, and for the students, for them to go and create structured play.
That sounds like a wonderful initiative. Creating a digital resource for students to self-plan and guide their structured play using questioning techniques is a fantastic long-term goal. How would you like to start supporting your colleague in this process? We can begin by setting clear objectives, outlining key milestones, or identifying the tools and resources you'll need. What are your thoughts?
So having GPT as our direct assistant and being our direct coach, as the students were coaching each other and using those resources to coach each other within our classrooms and getting the text to be the center of coaching us as better questioners and better teachers. This is essentially what we've got so far. So above it in green, you'll see at the top in the buckets, that is our Trello cards. We asked GPT to go and to help Pat and I go and bring out our steps over the next 9 months to 18 months and how our development is going to is going to go forward. And so you can hear this is our first wireframe, and so far now using you'll see we're using Emergent on how to go and create this Hooter lab for our students. So now we're creating a supportive play to learn app. So again, how are we going to move this into across the school? So you can see now, just from that small seed of using GPT as our guide, we can now just go and share this across the school. So the sessions now, we've had 63 people turn up to this. Now this is, I always get his name wrong, it's Clint, the guy who did this last year, Greg Clinton, thank you. So Greg Clinton, I stole this from Greg Clinton and did this at our school, because I realized that what Greg was talking about, everybody can achieve this. You just need to have this assistant to guide you. You just need to have an idea, and you can achieve the impossible. And so it's pretty lofty, but something that you couldn't do 6 months ago, you can physically do right now in your classroom. And you can boost everything that you do in your classroom and everything that surrounds it. And so far, we've had 60 people who've used this, and so far, it's been pretty successful. So how can we move this on even further? So I teach so many students that in this project, I teach 190 students just for this project. So in total, I teach 617 students across the year, and there's no way that I can assess all these students fast enough and in depth. And so we have this coding project just after Christmas, and it's 8 weeks long. And again, I front load, and then we have a project at the end. I have all the videos in the same format as I did with the year 4s. I give it to GPT, and I give it to my assessor. What can we do? What can we make? And so because it's got memory now, it said, what about the things, or what about the assessments and the websites that you made before? I said, great, can you guide me on GitHub? And it gave me this. The problem was that when the students use this, I don't know who's doing it. So I have to go and get it to teach me to go to the next level. It taught me about a thing called Firebase. I don't know what Firebase was at the time. It's a database, and this taught me about Postgres, MongoDB, about if I wanted linear, or if I wanted in-depth, if I wanted vertical databases, whatever. And so the students now are able to go and give me this. Okay, so this is all my students and my assessment. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't know what Kiara is doing in 5S, and in that line QB22 on start build, you've got no idea what this is. And so I asked it to teach me in Sheets how to create a dashboard, so I could see where the questions are failing, and this is all the questions are based on the videos that I've made before. And you can see question 20, question 24, and question 20 here, and 15, they're the lowest achieved questions. And I know why that is. That's residential. So we know that the students aren't using those, answering those questions fully. So then we're thinking, how can we take this even further? The next goal would be, I want to be able to report on this properly. I want to be able to give the students, just like Lele, and give it proper language in our style guide with our language that we use, which is called Characteristics of Effective Learning. One of the issues is that everything's put into sheets like this. So if I hit play on this, it's silent. It's only a minute long, but you can see that, oh, hang on a second. You can see that these are all the statements for my reports. And so this is for maths that I'm using at the moment. And on the left-hand side, I've got all the students, and I tick the boxes. And again, anybody who is at the Verso event last year, this is the proof that you can do anything. This was a presentation from the people at Alice Smith School. I've not talked to Alice Smith School, but here, this is the first time ever you can use the STAR Guide, the characteristics of effective learning, and apply all that STAR Guide to the reports at the end. And when I hit run on that script, it's going to put all my reports in here in the language. Now again, I don't know that script. I asked GPT to help me with the script, the Office script, and then I compared it in Gemini, and then it's going to write the reports for me. There. And they're written that fast. There's not sped up or slowed down. And so if I click on one, you can quickly see there the language that's been used and its characteristics of effective learning. Now, as you'll notice, there is a theme to this. What can we do next? And so we're using emergent.sh to go and turn this into a teacher-friendly school app so that the teachers can go and have a 4-step process to write the reports, and it all stemmed from that simple put text into GPT. On the left-hand side, I don't know what Emergent's telling me. I asked GPT on the left-hand side to tell me what is happening on the right-hand side. So I'm not a coder, but I use one against the other, and then if I don't understand, I'll ask GPT to give it to me as a 5-year-old. And so this is what we've got so far. You can see that we've got all the reports across the top, names down the side, and then that checkbox that you can use as an iPad and a phone and just report and give you a report in language that is your style guide for your school. And that is the end. Right. I'll be open to any questions. However, just to let you know, on the next slide, you can get this walkthrough. You can get these slides here, and also I'm going to be posting out the video that I'm recording at the end on my site here. And we're early for lunch. Anybody got any questions? Anybody like to ask anything? I know we're a big crowd, but I'm sure people will be wanting the same questions.
That last interface you had, was that clickable, or could you actually even have GPT take student data and fill that out for you?
So the question here is, can we use student data to go and fill this out for us? That is going to be at our next stage. So we want to go and take the student data that we've got in our lessons and apply it straight into here and use comparative notes. We also want student voice in the lower schools. So for FS to year 2, they want student voice. In years 3 and 4, they're using OneNote to go and collect over a term. So they use the transcribe tool in OneNote to get student voice, and then we can take the student voices out of there, because in class OneNote, it's individualized per student. And we can copy and paste that text, put it into here, and then we can make comparative notes, but that's coming next. Yes, hello.
Yeah, can I ask about the BPS walkthrough spot? So is it like you make a customized gem and then you share it to the teachers to assess themselves?
Exactly that, yeah.
So how was the teachers' response on that? It's quite terrifying because they have the data like assess exactly where are you and how you see it.
The thing is, when you do this, it's you assessing yourself. You don't have like your senior leaders in the room with you. I'm so used to recording myself now and assessing myself that I can give them the transcript and say, this is the question I asked, this is what I'm gauging it against. I'm gauging it against, say it again better, for example, and then I give them the response, and then I can invite them to my classroom. So then kind of I'm in control of when people come to my classroom, really.
So there is no kind of like a direct imperative statement from the boss, like you have to do this.
Oh yes, there is a directive from PLT and SLT and ALT. Yes, for sure. So they will say which parts of the walkthrough that we're going to use, and you say which parts of the walkthrough you are being assessed against, and then your lesson, because then you're in control. Then you can just say, I want you to assess me on X, Y, Z, and it will say, well, you've done this very well. You can apply better. You can apply this better. Your language could be slower, which I know that I should slow down. So those kinds of things.
This is super cool. Thank you very much for sharing this.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Right, lunchtime, everybody. Thank you.